The alarm screamed through every corridor of the stellar harmony, a sound that made even the bravest soldiers freeze. Ryan Fletcher dropped his datapad and looked up from the laboratory bench where he had been cataloging plant samples. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat gone wild. "Containment breach in Cargo Bay 7, the automated voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Security teams respond. Ryan's stomach dropped. Cargo Bay 7. That was where they kept the Ravager. He moved toward the door, but curiosity pulled him back. Through the lab's observation window, he could see into the main corridor. Alien Marines rushed past, their weapons charged and ready. Commander Oren led them, his reptilian face set in grim determination. The Dravik species were known as fierce warriors, but even Oren looked tense. Ryan had only seen the Ravager once during loading. The creature had been sedated, strapped down with restraints thick as tree trunks. Even unconscious, it had been terrifying. 12 feet tall, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light with claws that could slice through metal. The scientists had been so excited to study it. Ryan had felt only dread. The ship shuddered. Something heavy had hit a wall hard. The Marines ran faster. Ryan followed at a distance, keeping close to the walls. He knew he should evacuate, but something pulled him forward. Maybe it was his training as a xenobiologist. Maybe it was foolishness. Either way, his feet carried him toward the cargo bay. The sounds reached him first. Roaring so deep it vibrated in his chest. Weapon fire, the distinctive crack of plasma rifles. Screaming, both from the Marines and from whatever they were shooting at. Then a crash that shook the entire deck. Ryan reached the cargo bay entrance and pressed himself against the wall, peering around the corner. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Ravager was free. The containment field had failed completely, sparking and dying in the corner. The creature moved with terrifying speed despite its massive size. 3 Marines lay injured on the floor, their armor cracked. Commander Oren and 6 others surrounded the beast, firing continuously. Nothing worked. The plasma bolts hit the Ravager's scales and scattered like water on stone. The creature roared again, swiping at the nearest Marine. The soldier flew backward, crashing into a cargo container. Dr. Lisa appeared from a side corridor, her insectoid features clicking in distress. "Fall back. Everyone fall back." But there was nowhere to go. The Ravager blocked the main exit, and it was moving toward the injured Marines on the floor. One of them, a young Avran soldier, tried to crawl away. Her leg was bent at a wrong angle. Commander Oren stepped between her and the beast, raising his rifle even though it had done nothing so far. "Come on then," he growled. "Come get me instead." The Ravager lunged forward. Oren fired point blank into its face. The bolt hit the creature's eye ridge and dissipated. Massive jaws opened, showing rows of teeth like daggers. Ryan moved without thinking. His body reacted before his brain could stop him. He stepped into the cargo bay and walked toward the Ravager with steady, even steps. "Fletcher, no," Dr. Lissa screamed. "Get back!" But Ryan kept walking. The Ravager turned toward him, away from Oren and the injured Marine. Those eyes, deep yellow and burning with rage, locked onto the human. The creature lowered itself into a hunting stance, every muscle coiled and ready to spring. Ryan stopped about 10 feet away. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might break his ribs, but he kept his breathing slow and steady. He had grown up on Earth on a farm in Montana. He had dealt with angry bulls, spooked horses, even a mountain lion once. This was different, yes. Bigger, more dangerous alien. But the principle was the same. Fear made animals aggressive. Aggression met with aggression only made things worse. Calm was what worked. Calm and confidence. Ryan lowered himself slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. He extended his hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. "Hey there," he said softly. "Hey, it's okay." The Ravager's nostrils flared. It sniffed the air, head tilting slightly. The rage in its eyes flickered, confused now. "Nobody's going to hurt you." Ryan continued, keeping his voice low and gentle. "You're scared, aren't you? Woke up in a strange place, strangers shooting at you. That's terrifying." "I get it." He took one step closer. The Ravager's lip curled, showing those terrible teeth, but it didn't attack. Ryan took another step. Then another. "That's it," he murmured. "See, I'm not scary. Just a guy. Just Ryan." He was close enough now to touch it. Close enough that those jaws could close on his head in half a second. Behind him, he heard someone sob. Probably Oren, thinking he was about to watch a human die in the stupidest way possible. Ryan reached up slowly and placed his hand under the Ravager's jaw. right where the scales met softer skin. He scratched gently, moving his fingers in small circles. The Ravager's eyes widened. Its entire body went still. Ryan kept scratching, applying a little more pressure. "There you go," he whispered.
That feel good?
"Yeah, I thought so." The massive creature leaned into his touch. A sound came from its throat. Not a roar this time, but something else. Something almost like a purr. If a purr could shake the walls. Ryan scratched under the other side of the jaw. The Ravager's eyes half closed. Its tail, which had been lashing like a whip, settled on the floor. Complete silence filled the cargo bay. Every Marine, every scientist, every crew member stared in disbelief. Ryan stepped backward slowly, hand still extended. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you back home, okay? Back where it's safe." The Ravager followed him like a puppy. Ryan led it back toward the damaged containment area. Engineers rushed to repair the field, their hands shaking. When the barrier flickered back to life, the Ravager settled down inside without resistance, its eyes still on Ryan. Ryan stepped back and his knees nearly gave out. The adrenaline hit him all at once, making him dizzy. Commander Oren caught his arm. "What," the Dravek said slowly, "was that?" Ryan looked at his own hand, still tingling from contact with alien scales. "I have no idea." Medical teams swarmed the cargo bay within minutes, treating the injured Marines while everyone else tried to understand what had just happened. Ryan sat on a cargo container, still shaking, while Dr. Lissa paced back and forth in front of him. Her compound eyes reflected the overhead lights in a way that made her look even more agitated. "Explain it again," she demanded. "From the beginning. What made you think you could approach a Ravager?" Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't think. I just moved. It was going to kill those Marines. So you decided to die instead?" Commander Oren joined them, his scales showing patches of lighter color where he had been stressed. For his species, that was like breaking out in a cold sweat. "That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I have ever witnessed." "Definitely foolish," Ryan muttered. "But it worked." Dr. Lisa stopped pacing and leaned close to him. "Yes, it worked. That is what concerns me. Nothing should work on a Ravager. They are apex predators from a death world. They do not respond to peaceful gestures. They do not calm down when threatened. They certainly do not enjoy being petted like some domesticated creature." Ryan looked past her toward the containment field. The Ravager lay curled up inside, apparently sleeping. Every few seconds, it would open one eye and scan the room until it spotted Ryan. Then it would close the eye again, satisfied. "It's watching me," Ryan said. "Why is it watching me?" A medic approached them, a small blue-skinned alien from the Kelvin species. "Excuse me, Dr. Lissa, the injured Marines are stable. 3 broken bones, multiple contusions, but nothing life-threatening. They were very lucky." "Lucky that Fletcher has apparently lost his mind," Oren grumbled, but there was no real anger in his voice. "You saved their lives. I cannot argue with results, no matter how insane the method." Dr. Lisa waved the medic away and pulled out a scanning device. "I want to run some tests on you, Fletcher. There has to be a scientific explanation for what occurred here." "What kind of tests?" "Blood samples, pheromone analysis, brain scans, everything. The Coalition needs to understand this before we have another incident." She pointed toward the Ravager. "That creature should have killed you. Instead, it behaved as if you were pack family. This is unprecedented." Ryan allowed her to take a blood sample, though he felt ridiculous doing it. What could his blood possibly show? He was just a normal human from Earth, nothing special about him. Over the next few hours, Dr. Lissa ran test after test. She had Ryan stand near the containment field while she monitored the Ravager's reactions. The creature perked up every time Ryan approached, pressing against the barrier like it wanted to be closer to him. When Ryan moved away, it became agitated, pacing and growling softly. Other crew members tried approaching. Nothing. The Ravager ignored them completely, or worse, showed signs of aggression when they got too close. But with Ryan it was different. Calm, almost affectionate. "Fascinating," Dr. Lissa murmured, studying her scanner readings, "and deeply troubling." "What did you find?" Ryan asked. She showed him the screen, though the data meant nothing to him. "Humans produce a unique combination of pheromones that I have never seen in any other Coalition species. These chemicals are similar to those produced by Earth predators. Wolves, bears, large cats, creatures from your death world." "Earth isn't a death world," Ryan protested. "It's just home." Commander Oren, who had been listening quietly, made a sound like a laugh. Fletcher, your planet is classified as Category 9 on the danger scale. Only one level below the Ravager homeworld. Your oceans have creatures that can swallow ships. Your weather can level cities. Your smallest insects carry diseases that can kill. If that is not a death world, I do not know what is. Ryan had never thought about it that way. To him, Earth was normal. Sure, there were dangerous animals and natural disasters, but humans had adapted. That was just life. So you are saying, Oren continued, that Fletcher smells like a predator to the Ravager, and therefore it recognizes him as kin. More than that, Dr. Lissa said. The pheromones seemed to trigger a calming response in the creature's brain, like a chemical signal that says safe or family. It is as if humans and Ravagers share something fundamental, something that evolved on both your brutal worlds. Ryan looked at his hands, the same hands that had touched the most dangerous creature in known space. So any human could do what I did? In theory, yes. Though your calm demeanor certainly helped. If you had approached with fear or aggression, the pheromones alone might not have been enough. Dr. Lissa folded her arms. We need to test this further. We need to contact other humans on this ship and run the same analysis. There were 5 other humans on the Stellar Harmony, all working in different departments. Over the next day, Dr. Lissa brought them all to the cargo bay. Each one showed the same unique pheromone signature. Each one could approach the Ravager without triggering aggression. The creature remained calm around all of them, though it showed a clear preference for Ryan, probably because he had been first. Word spread quickly through the ship. Whispers in the hallways, stares when Ryan walked past. The other species on board looked at humans differently now, not with fear exactly, but with a new kind of respect, and maybe a little wariness. On the 3rd day after the incident, Dr. Lissa called Ryan to her laboratory. Commander Oren was already there, along with several holographic projections of Coalition officials. They were having a meeting, and from the serious expressions, it was not good news. Fletcher, one of the holograms said, an elderly Avron with silver-tinged features, thank you for joining us. I am Council Member Brex. We have been monitoring the situation aboard the Stellar Harmony with great interest. Ryan nodded, unsure what to say. These were important people, the kind who made decisions that affected entire star systems. We have a problem, Brex continued, a severe one. 6 days ago, our scouts discovered a Ravager breeding ground in the outer rim. Dozens of creatures, perhaps hundreds. They are migrating toward colonized space. Ryan felt his stomach sink. How bad is it? Catastrophic, another hologram answered. This one a Dravek female. We have already lost 3 research outposts. Standard military responses have failed. The creatures are too strong, too fast, too resistant to our weapons. Every engagement results in massive casualties. Commander Oren stepped forward. Our conventional tactics are designed for civilized warfare against opponents who follow rules. Ravagers follow no rules. They are perfect killing machines. Which brings us to you, Fletcher, Breck said. You and your fellow humans, if what Dr. Lissa reports is true, you may be the only ones who can approach these creatures safely. Ryan's mouth went dry. You want us to do what exactly? Talk to them, Breck said simply. Find out what they want, why they are migrating. Perhaps we can reach an understanding. They're animals, Ryan said. Intelligent maybe, but still animals. I can't just have a conversation with them. Can you not? Dr. Lissa challenged. You communicated with the one in our cargo bay. Perhaps not with words, but you communicated nonetheless. It understood that you meant no harm. It trusted you. Ryan looked at each face, both physical and holographic. They were serious. They actually expected him to travel to a Ravager breeding ground and somehow make peace with creatures that had killed hundreds of people. This is insane, he whispered. Yes, Oren agreed, but it may also be our only chance. Ryan spent 2 days arguing against the plan, but the Coalition Council had already made their decision. A team would be assembled and sent to make contact with the Ravager migration. Ryan would lead it, along with 4 other humans from various Coalition ships. They arrived one by one, each looking as nervous as Ryan felt. Beth Torres came first, a combat specialist with short dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had served in Earth's military before joining the Coalition, and carried herself like someone who had seen real danger before. So we are walking into a nest of monsters with no weapons and hoping they like us, she said flatly. Great plan. David Chen arrived next, a linguist who specialized in nonverbal communication. He was younger than Ryan, maybe 25, with glasses that kept sliding down his nose. I have been studying the recordings of your interaction with the Ravager, he told Ryan excitedly. The body language, the vocalizations, there are patterns there, definitely patterns. Amira Hassan, an ecologist with warm brown skin and a calm smile, seemed the most at ease with the situation. Every species has motivations, she said. Find the motivation, find the solution. Ravagers must want something. They are not migrating for fun. The last to arrive was Greg Walsh, an engineer with red hair and more freckles than seemed possible. He looked terrified. I fix machines, he said. Why am I here? Because you are human, Dr. Lissa explained. And because someone needs to maintain the equipment during the mission. All 5 of you have the same pheromone signature. All 5 of you should be able to interact safely with the Ravagers. Should be, Greg repeated. That is not exactly reassuring. Commander Oren insisted on joining the mission with a small security team, despite Dr. Lissa's protests. If this goes wrong, he said firmly, someone needs to be there to evacuate the humans. That someone is me. They departed on a modified transport ship 2 days later. The Stellar Harmony remained in orbit, monitoring their progress. The journey to the outer rim took 3 days through jump gates, and with each passing hour, Ryan felt his anxiety grow. The other humans dealt with it in different ways. Beth ran combat drills in the cargo bay. David studied behavioral patterns until his eyes glazed over. Amira meditated. Greg compulsively checked and rechecked every system on the ship. Ryan mostly sat in the observation deck and watched the stars slip past. Commander Oren found him there on the second night. Cannot sleep? The Dravek asked, settling his large frame into a chair that groaned under his weight. Too much on my mind, Ryan admitted. What if I am wrong? What if the Ravager on your ship was just an exception? What if these others tear us apart the moment we land? Oren was quiet for a moment. Then we will die quickly, which is better than many alternatives. But I do not think you are wrong, Fletcher. I have been a soldier for 30 years. I have seen combat across a dozen worlds. I have learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts say you have something special. All humans do. We are just people from Earth, Ryan said. Nothing special about us. That is where you are wrong. Most coalition species evolved on gentle worlds. Planets where the biggest danger was perhaps a storm or a drought. Your Earth tried to kill your ancestors every single day. You survived anyway. You thrived. That makes you remarkable. Ryan had never thought about it that way, but maybe Oren was right. Humans had survived ice ages, predators, diseases, wars. They had conquered their hostile planet through stubbornness and adaptability. Thank you, Ryan said quietly. Oren nodded and stood. Get some rest. We arrive tomorrow. The planet designated as the Ravager breeding ground was called Kral in Coalition databases. As their ship entered orbit, Ryan understood immediately why Ravagers were so dangerous. Kral made Earth look peaceful. Massive storms covered half the surface. The atmosphere readings showed acid rain, toxic gases, and radiation levels that would kill most species within hours. The temperature swung wildly between freezing and boiling depending on the region. That is a nightmare planet, Greg said, staring at the readings. How does anything live there? Things that are tougher than us, Beth said grimly. She was already suited up, checking her equipment even though Dr. Lissa had forbidden weapons. We cannot bring weapons, the scientist had insisted. The Ravagers will see them as a threat. This mission succeeds only if we appear peaceful. Beth had not been happy about that, but she obeyed orders. Landing was rough. The ship shook violently as they descended through the storms. Lightning struck their hull twice. The pilots, both experienced Kelvin professionals, looked terrified. When they finally touched down on a rocky plateau, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The ramp lowered and the environment immediately tried to kill them. The wind screamed loud enough to hurt, carrying stinging sand. The air was breathable but smelled like sulfur and decay. The ground was sharp volcanic rock that crunched under their boots. And in the distance, moving through the wasteland like dark shadows, were the Ravagers. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. It was hard to tell because they blended so well with the environment. Stay close together, Commander Oren ordered. His security team formed a protective circle around the humans. David pointed toward a rocky outcropping about half a mile away. There, that looks like a den entrance. The concentration of Ravagers is highest in that area. They walked slowly, every step deliberate. The Ravagers noticed them quickly. Several of the creatures detached from their groups and began moving closer, curious or perhaps threatened by the intruders. Ryan's heart pounded. This was different from the cargo bay. There it had been one creature in a confined space. Here, they were surrounded by an entire pack on their home territory. If this went wrong, there would be no escape. The first Ravager to reach them was enormous, even larger than the one on the Stellar Harmony. It approached from the front, moving with deadly grace. Its yellow eyes locked onto Commander Oren, and it growled, a sound that vibrated through the ground. "Do not move," Ryan said quietly. "Everyone stay calm." The Ravager sniffed the air. Its attention shifted from Oren to the humans, and something in its posture changed. The aggressive stance relaxed slightly. The growl faded. Ryan stepped forward, just like before. "Hey there," he said softly. "We are not here to hurt you. We just want to talk." The Ravager tilted its massive head. Behind it, more creatures gathered, forming a semicircle. Ryan counted at least 20, all watching with those burning yellow eyes. He reached out slowly and touched the first Ravager under its jaw, scratching gently. The creature leaned into his hand, and that purring sound started up again. The other Ravagers moved closer, intrigued. Beth stepped up beside Ryan, her fear hidden behind a mask of calm. She reached out to another creature, mimicking Ryan's movements. The Ravager accepted her touch without aggression. "It is working," David whispered, awestruck. "It is actually working." One by one, the other humans made contact. Amira, David, even Greg, though his hand shook so badly he nearly pulled back. Each time, the Ravagers responded with that same calm acceptance. Commander Oren and his security team stood frozen, weapons lowered, watching humans bond with the galaxy's most feared predators. Then the largest Ravager Ryan had ever seen emerged from the den entrance. It had to be 15 feet tall, covered in scars that told stories of countless battles. The Alpha. It looked at the humans, then at its pack, then back at the humans again. It began walking toward them with slow, deliberate steps. The Alpha Ravager moved like a mountain coming to life, each step shaking the ground beneath their feet. The other Ravagers parted immediately, creating a path for their leader. Ryan watched the massive creature approach and felt his courage waver for the first time since landing on this hostile world. This was different. The Alpha was not just bigger than the others. It carried itself with an authority that was almost visible, like a weight in the air. Every scar on its body told a story of survival against impossible odds. This was a creature that had fought its way to leadership through sheer strength and will. Beth moved closer to Ryan. "That thing could eat all of us and still be hungry," she muttered. "Quiet," Ryan whispered. "It can probably hear you." The Alpha stopped about 20 feet away. Its eyes, darker yellow than the others and flecked with amber, studied each human in turn. Then it focused entirely on Ryan, as if sensing he was the leader of this small group. Ryan forced himself to breathe normally. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he knew that would be fatal. Prey ran, prey got chased. Prey got caught. He was not prey. He had to believe that. He stepped forward, away from the safety of the group. Behind him, Commander Oren made a sound of protest, but Ryan kept moving. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The distance between him and the Alpha closed slowly. "I know you can understand me," Ryan said, keeping his voice low and steady. Maybe not the words, but the tone. The intention. "We came here in peace. No weapons, no tricks. Just us trying to understand why you are moving toward our colonies." The Alpha's nostrils flared, breathing in Ryan's scent. The pheromones. The chemical signature that marked him as kin to these creatures, even though they came from different worlds. Ryan extended his hand, palm up. The same gesture that had worked before. "I am not afraid of you." Well, that is a lie. I am terrified. But I am here anyway because this is important. Your people and mine, we do not have to be enemies. The Alpha leaned down, bringing its massive head level with Ryan's. They were close enough now that Ryan could feel the heat of its breath, smell the sharp metallic scent of its scales, close enough that those jaws could close on him in an instant. Ryan reached up slowly and placed his hand on the side of the Alpha's face, just above the jaw. He scratched gently the way he had learned worked with these creatures. The Alpha's eyes half closed. A rumble came from deep in its chest, not quite a purr, but something similar. "That is right," Ryan murmured. "We are the same, you and us. Different shapes, different worlds, but the same underneath. Survivors, fighters, stubborn enough to refuse to give up no matter what." The Alpha pulled back suddenly and turned toward the den entrance. It made a series of sounds, clicks and growls, and something that was almost a whistle. The other Ravagers responded immediately, moving aside to create an even wider path. The Alpha looked back at Ryan and made a gesture with its head. An invitation. Or maybe a command. "I think it wants us to follow," David said, his voice shaking with excitement. Commander Oren stepped forward. "Fletcher, this could be a trap. We should return to the ship and report what we have learned." But Ryan shook his head. "No, we came here to communicate. They are trying to communicate with us. We have to see this through." He followed the Alpha toward the den entrance. The other humans came with him, and after a moment of hesitation, so did Oren and his security team. They descended into darkness, following the massive shape of the Alpha through tunnels carved from volcanic rock. The tunnels were massive, easily large enough for the Ravagers to move through comfortably. Bioluminescent fungi grew along the walls, providing enough light to see by. The air was warmer down here and oddly humid. Sounds echoed from deeper in the complex, the movements and calls of many creatures. They emerged into an enormous cavern that took Ryan's breath away. It was a city, or the closest thing to a city that creatures like Ravagers would build. Natural shelves in the rock had been expanded into dens. A stream of water, surprisingly clear, ran through the center. And everywhere there were Ravagers, adults, juveniles, even young ones that could not be more than a few months old. "A breeding ground," Amira said softly. "This is their nursery. Their home." The Alpha led them to the center of the cavern, where the largest den overlooked everything else. Other adult Ravagers gathered around them, curious but not aggressive. The younger ones peeked out from hiding spots, their eyes wide with wonder at the strange visitors. David pulled out a small recording device, capturing everything. "This is incredible. The social structure, the family groups. They are not mindless beasts. They are people, just very different people." The Alpha made more sounds, gesturing with its head and claws. Ryan watched carefully, trying to understand. David stepped closer, his analytical mind working through the communication like a puzzle. "I think," David said slowly, "it is trying to tell us something about why they are moving. Look, it keeps gesturing toward that wall." They turned to look where the Alpha indicated. On the far wall of the cavern, illuminated by the fungi, was a crude but clear image carved into the stone. It showed what looked like a star, bright and prominent. Around it were smaller shapes that might represent planets, and across it all was a jagged line, like a crack spreading through glass. "What is that supposed to mean?" Greg asked. Amira stepped closer to the carving, studying it intently. Her background as an ecologist meant she understood environmental pressures better than most. "The star," she said. "Their star. Something is wrong with it." The Alpha made an affirmative sound, almost like agreement. It gestured more forcefully at the carving, then toward the surface above them. "We need to get this information back to the ship," Amira said urgently. "We need to scan their sun. If what I think is happening is actually happening, then the Ravagers are not migrating out of aggression. They are fleeing." Commander Oren immediately contacted the ship. Within minutes, the pilots ran a full stellar analysis of Krall's sun. When the results came back, Amira's face went pale. "The star is dying," she said quietly. "Well, not dying exactly. It is expanding, becoming unstable. In maybe 5 to 10 years, this entire planet will be uninhabitable. The radiation levels will sterilize the surface. The temperature will rise beyond what even Ravagers can survive. They know. Somehow they know." Ryan looked at the Alpha, seeing the creature in a new light. Not a mindless predator threatening coalition space. A desperate parent trying to save its children. A leader seeking a new home before the old one burned. "So they are moving toward our territory because they have nowhere else to go," Beth said. "And we have been shooting at refugees." The implications hit everyone hard. The coalition had been treating the Ravager migration as an invasion, as an act of aggression. But these creatures were running from extinction. Everything they were doing made sense in that context. Ryan reached out and touched the Alpha's arm, drawing its attention. "We understand now," he said. "And we are going to help. I promise you we will find you a new home." The Alpha watched him with those intelligent eyes, and Ryan had the distinct feeling it understood every word. They spent 3 more hours in the cavern, with David documenting everything while Amira studied the social structures and Greg took readings of the environmental conditions. The Ravagers watched them with cautious acceptance, the younger ones becoming bolder as time passed. One juvenile, barely 6 feet tall, approached Beth and bumped its head against her shoulder like an oversized cat seeking attention. "Okay," Beth said, her tough exterior cracking slightly as she scratched behind the creature's head ridge. "This one is kind of cute, in a deadly, terrifying monster sort of way." Ryan stayed close to the Alpha, trying to communicate through gestures and tone what they had learned. He pointed to the carved star, then to the sky above, then made a spreading motion with his hands to indicate expansion. The Alpha watched intently and made a low rumbling sound that others seemed to understand as acknowledgement. Commander Oren stood apart from the group, his security team clustered around him. They looked uncomfortable but not hostile. One of them, a young Dravek named Kel, finally approached Ryan. "I have fought Ravagers twice before this mission," Kel said quietly. "Lost friends to them. I wanted to hate them. But watching them here, with their young, protecting their families, they are just like us." "Yes," Ryan agreed. "That is exactly what they are." When they finally returned to the surface, the Alpha followed them all the way to their ship. It stood watching as they prepared to depart, its massive form silhouetted against the stormy sky. Ryan felt an odd pang of sadness leaving it behind. "We will be back," he called out. "I promise." The Alpha tilted its head, then raised one clawed hand in what looked remarkably like a wave. The journey back to Coalition space took another 3 days, but this time the mood was different. Instead of fear, there was purpose. They had evidence, data, and most importantly, understanding. The Ravagers were not monsters. They were survivors in desperate need of help. Dr. Lisa met them as soon as they docked with the Stellar Harmony. She listened to their report with growing excitement, interrupting frequently to ask questions and examine the recordings David had made. "This changes everything," she said when they finished. "We have been fighting them when we should have been helping them. The Council needs to see this immediately." An emergency session was called. Ryan found himself standing in front of holographic projections of the most powerful leaders in the Coalition, presenting his findings. He talked about the dying star, the carved warnings, the families huddled in the caverns. He showed them footage of Ravager young playing together, of adults teaching juveniles to hunt, of a community facing extinction. The Council members listened in silence. Some looked skeptical. Others appeared moved by what they were seeing. Council member Breck spoke first. "This is compelling evidence, Fletcher. But even if we accept that the Ravagers are refugees rather than invaders, we still face a problem. Where can they go? They need harsh worlds to survive, Category 9 or higher. We have very few such planets in Coalition space, and most are already occupied." "The frontier," Amira spoke up. She had been invited to present the ecological data. "There are dozens of surveyed but uncolonized deathworlds in the frontier sectors. They were deemed too dangerous for most species to settle. But for Ravagers, they would be perfect." "The frontier is unclaimed space," another council member objected, a Kelvin with pale blue skin, technically outside Coalition jurisdiction. "If we settle Ravagers there, we create a potential wild territory just beyond our borders." "Then we expand the borders," Commander Oren said firmly. He had gained a lot of respect for the Ravagers during the mission. "Bring the frontier under Coalition protection. Offer the Ravagers full membership status in exchange for their cooperation in defending those sectors." That caused an uproar. Multiple council members began speaking at once, some in favor and some opposed. The idea of making Ravagers official members of the Coalition was unprecedented. These were creatures that had killed Coalition citizens, destroyed outposts, and caused panic across multiple systems. But they were also intelligent beings, fighting for survival. That counted for something. The debate raged for hours. Ryan and his team were dismissed while the council deliberated in private. They waited in an observation lounge watching the stars and trying not to think about what would happen if the council said no. "We should have a backup plan," Greg said nervously. "What if they refuse to help?" "Then we help anyway," Beth said with conviction. "I did not bond with that juvenile Ravager just to let her species die. If the Coalition will not act, we find another way." Ryan smiled at that. Beth had seemed the least likely to develop empathy for the Ravagers, but she had been just as affected as the rest of them. That was the power of connection, of seeing others as people rather than threats. The waiting stretched into the night cycle. Ryan dozed in his chair, exhausted from stress and travel. He dreamed of the Alpha Ravager, of those intelligent amber-flecked eyes, of a promise made in a dying world's cavern. He woke to someone shaking his shoulder. Dr. Lissa stood over him, and she was smiling. "The council has made their decision," she said. "Come quickly." They rushed to the conference room. The holographic council members were still assembled, though many looked tired from the long debate. Council member Brex addressed them directly. After extensive discussion and review of all evidence, the Coalition has decided to offer sanctuary to the Ravager species. 7 worlds in the frontier sectors have been identified as suitable habitats. These worlds will be designated as Ravager territories, with full Coalition protection and support. Ryan felt relief flood through him so intensely his knees went weak. Beth grabbed his arm to steady him. "However," Brex continued, and Ryan's relief faltered, "this offer comes with conditions. The Ravagers must accept Coalition authority. They must agree to peaceful coexistence with other species, and most importantly, they must have ambassadors who can speak for them and help maintain this new relationship." The council member looked directly at Ryan. "Fletcher, you and your team have proven you can communicate with these creatures better than anyone. We are asking you to serve as official ambassadors to the Ravager species. You would be responsible for facilitating their relocation, helping them establish their new territories, and serving as liaisons between their leaders and ours." Ryan looked at his teammates. Beth nodded immediately. David looked excited. Amira smiled warmly. Even Greg, nervous Greg who just wanted to fix machines, gave a thumbs up. "We accept," Ryan said. "Good. There is one more thing." Brex gestured, and a new hologram appeared. It showed a Coalition ship approaching Crawl. "We are sending a diplomatic vessel to make formal contact with the Ravager leaders. You will be on that ship, Fletcher. You will bring them our offer of sanctuary and help negotiate the terms of their relocation. This must happen quickly. According to Dr. Hassan's analysis, they have less time than we thought." The meeting ended with details about logistics, timelines, and resources. Ryan barely heard any of it. His mind was already back on Crawl, in that cavern with the Alpha and its people. He was going back. He was going to keep his promise. As they left the conference room, Commander Oren caught up with them. "I will be commanding the security detail for the diplomatic mission," he said. "It seems I have developed a vested interest in seeing this succeed." "Thank you," Ryan said sincerely. "For believing in this. For believing in them." Oren's scales flickered with warmth, the Dravek equivalent of a smile. "You taught me something important, Fletcher. Strength is not just about weapons and armor. Sometimes true strength is extending your hand to those who frighten you. Your species understands that in a way we are only beginning to learn." The diplomatic vessel arrived at Crawl 6 days later, much larger than the transport they had used before. It carried supplies, technology, and most importantly, hope. Ryan stood on the bridge as they descended through the familiar violent storms, feeling both excited and nervous about what came next. This time they landed closer to the main den complex, with the Alpha's permission, transmitted through a series of coordinated roars that David had learned to interpret. When the ramp lowered, the Alpha was waiting for them with a dozen other adult Ravagers forming an honor guard of sorts. Ryan walked down the ramp first, as was now his role. The Alpha approached and lowered its massive head. Ryan reached up and scratched the familiar spot under its jaw, a greeting between friends. "We came back," Ryan said, "just like I promised, and we brought good news." David stepped forward with a portable holographic projector. He activated it, showing 3-dimensional images of the 7 worlds that had been selected as Ravager territory. Harsh planets with severe weather, dangerous wildlife, and all the characteristics that Ravagers needed to thrive. The Alpha watched intently as David cycled through the images. Other Ravagers gathered around, their yellow eyes reflecting the blue light of the holograms. When the presentation finished, the Alpha made a series of sounds that David had started calling their language. It was complex, more sophisticated than they had initially realized. "I think it is asking about the distance," David said, adjusting his translator, "and whether there are other species already living on these worlds." Amira stepped forward and brought up star maps, showing the location of the new territories relative to Crawl. She used simple gestures to indicate that the worlds were uninhabited by sentient species, available for the Ravagers to claim. The Alpha turned to its companions and they communicated among themselves in low rumbles and clicks. It was clearly a discussion, possibly even an argument. Some of the Ravagers seemed hesitant while others appeared eager. Ryan watched the dynamic play out, fascinated by the complexity of their social structure. Finally, the Alpha turned back to the humans and made a definitive sound. David's translator beeped. "I think that was yes. They accept our offer." But the Alpha was not done. It gestured toward the cavern entrance and made more sounds. David frowned, working to understand. "It wants us to see something first," he said. "Something important before they agree to leave." They followed the Alpha back into the cavern system, deeper than they had gone before. The tunnels narrowed and the air grew hotter. They passed through chambers filled with sleeping Ravagers, through nurseries where the young were kept safe, through storage areas where food was preserved in ways that showed surprising intelligence. At the deepest point, they entered a chamber unlike any other. The walls were covered in carvings, thousands of them depicting what looked like the entire history of the Ravager species. Ryan stared in awe at images of hunts, of battles, of families, of joy and loss carved in stone by claws that could tear through metal. The Alpha approached one particular section of wall and touched it gently, almost reverently. The carvings here showed Ravagers under a bright star, thriving and peaceful. Then the star began to change in subsequent images, growing larger and fiercer. The final carving showed Ravagers leaving their world, traveling toward new stars. "It is a prophecy," Amira breathed, "or maybe a warning passed down through generations." They knew this day would come. They have been preparing for it. The Alpha made more sounds, and this time the emotion behind them was clear even without translation. Sadness, loss, but also determination. "It is saying goodbye," David said quietly, his own voice thick with emotion. "To its ancestors, to everyone who lived and died on this world. It wants us to understand that leaving is not easy for them, even though they must." Ryan stepped forward and placed his hand on the Alpha's shoulder. "We understand. Home is not just a place. It is memory, history, family. You are not just leaving a planet. You are leaving everything your people have ever known." The Alpha lowered its head and leaned against Ryan, seeking comfort. Around them, the other Ravagers made soft sounds of grief. Even Beth, tough, unflappable Beth, wiped at her eyes. They stayed in that chamber for a long time, honoring the weight of what was about to happen. Then slowly, with heavy hearts but clear purpose, they returned to the surface to begin the work of evacuation. Over the following weeks, coalition ships arrived in groups to transport the Ravagers to their new worlds. It was a massive logistical operation requiring careful coordination. The Ravagers had to be sedated for space travel, not because they were dangerous, but because the confined spaces of ships made them anxious. Ryan and his team worked tirelessly, ensuring that families stayed together and that the transition was as smooth as possible. The Alpha refused sedation and traveled on Ryan's ship, trusting him to keep it safe during the journey. It spent the time learning about coalition technology, examining everything with intense curiosity. Greg, who had initially been terrified of the creatures, now spent hours teaching the Alpha about engine systems and power cores. "It is smarter than half the engineers I know," Greg admitted one day as the Alpha correctly diagnosed a problem with the cooling system. "If we give them time and resources, they could probably build their own ships." They arrived at the first of the 7 worlds, a planet that had been designated New Crawl in honor of their homeworld. It was harsh and beautiful, with volcanic mountain ranges, acidic seas, and storms that raged across continents, perfect for Ravagers. When the Alpha stepped onto the surface for the first time, it stood very still for a long moment. Then it threw back its head and roared, a sound of triumph and claim. Within seconds, every Ravager on the planet responded, their voices combining into a symphony of survival. The settlement process took months. Coalition support teams helped establish basic infrastructure. Though the Ravagers proved remarkably self-sufficient, they adapted quickly to their new home, carving out dens and establishing hunting grounds. The young ones thrived, growing stronger in an environment that welcomed their nature rather than fearing it. Ryan became a permanent resident of New Crawl, along with his team. They served as the bridge between 2 very different kinds of people, translating not just language but culture and intention. More humans volunteered to join the ambassador program, drawn by the unique connection between their species and the Ravagers. 6 months after the evacuation was complete, Krall's sun went nova. The planet that had been home to Ravagers for millions of years was consumed in fire. Ryan stood on a cliff overlooking New Krall's northern territories and watched the distant light show through a telescope. The Alpha stood beside him, making no sound but radiating grief. "I'm sorry," Ryan said softly. "I know it hurts." The Alpha turned to him and made a sound that David's translator had recently decoded. It meant family. The creature touched Ryan's shoulder gently with one massive claw, then gestured to the landscape around them where Ravagers lived and hunted and raised their young. Ryan understood. Home was gone, yes, but home was also here now in this new place. And family was not just the Ravagers anymore. It included the humans who had helped them survive, who had seen them not as monsters but as people. Over the following year, something unprecedented happened. The Ravagers, once feared across the galaxy as mindless predators, became respected members of the Coalition. Their strength and ferocity were channeled into protection rather than destruction. When dangerous situations arose in the frontier sectors, Ravagers volunteered to help. They became explorers, scouts, even rescue workers in environments too harsh for most species. And always humans were with them. The bond that had started with Ryan scratching under a jaw ridge had grown into something larger. The two species, both forged in the crucible of deathworlds, understood each other in ways others could not. Council member Brex visited New Krall 1 year after the evacuation. Ryan gave her a tour, showing her the thriving settlements and the peaceful coexistence between humans and Ravagers. They watched young Ravagers play with human children, supervised by adults from both species. "When you first approached that Ravager on the Stellar Harmony," Breck said, "I thought you were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "Probably both," Ryan admitted. "You changed the galaxy, Fletcher. You saw people where everyone else saw monsters. You extended your hand when others reached for weapons. That is the true spirit of the Coalition. Not just different species coexisting, but truly understanding and supporting each other." That evening, Ryan sat outside his dwelling as the sun set over New Krall. The Alpha approached, as it often did during these quiet moments. It had learned to lower itself to the ground so Ryan could reach its head more easily. Ryan scratched the familiar spot under its jaw, smiling as the massive creature made that rumbling purr sound. "You know," he said conversationally, "a year ago I was just a xenobiologist cataloging plant samples. Then you came along and made me an ambassador to an entire species." The Alpha made a sound that might have been amusement. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Ryan continued, "but I would not change it. You taught me something important. Fear is not the same as danger. Sometimes the things that scare us most are just different versions of ourselves, seeking the same things we want: safety, family, a place to belong." The Alpha leaned against him, its massive weight somehow comforting rather than threatening. In the distance, other Ravagers called to each other as they settled for the night. Human voices answered them, bidding goodnight in a mixture of languages that was becoming unique to New Krall. Ryan looked up at the stars and thought about how everything had changed because he had chosen to walk forward instead of running away, because he had offered a scratch instead of a weapon, because he had seen what others missed. Sometimes, he reflected, saving the galaxy was not about grand battles or brilliant strategies. Sometimes it was as simple as extending your hand to someone who needed a friend. The Alpha made one more sound before closing its eyes. The translator beeped softly. "Thank you." Ryan smiled and continued scratching under that massive jaw, two survivors from deathworlds watching the sunset together in their new home. The galaxy had changed, and so had they, all because of one moment of courage and compassion in a cargo bay that felt like a lifetime ago. The story of how Marines failed to control the beast but one human calmed it with a scratch became legend. But for Ryan, it was never about legend. It was about seeing someone who needed help and choosing to help them, even when everyone said it was impossible. That more than anything else was what it meant to be human.